helping out. Like I said, my name is Jeremy St. Arnold. I'm the assistant biologist of wildlife and forestry here for the tribe. This is the Red Cliff Wolf Protection Plan. Next slide. I'd like to apologize in advance if I talk a little fast. I've been pretty excited about this all day. So it's bound to happen. So a little bit about the background of wolves in Wisconsin. So pre-European contact, there was a lot more large prey items. We had woodland buffalo, we had elk, there was caribou, there was moose, there was deer. The wolf population, there's a lot of different numbers out there. I've heard some crazy numbers, 20 to 50,000, but the best estimate I've seen is around 3,000 to 5,000 wolves. And another thing is, traditionally, whenever wolves were seen, it's not like it is today where you assume that it's not going to be a good hunting ground. The assumption used to be if you see wolves, there's obviously prey items there, and there's going to be things that can sustain life. So, big difference in the way of thinking when you see wolves then compared to now. And then after European contact, we lost a lot of our large prey species. Nowadays, we're down to white-tailed deer, the occasional moose that will come through, and caribou don't really come around at all. There's no buffalo, so there's a lot less prey items for wolves. And a lot of the reason for wolves disappearing was the over-hunting, over-trapping. There was habitat loss and degradation due to farming and logging, and just the sheer amount of people that came into the state. Some of the other things that have happened, there was bounties on wolves for a long period of time, and it took until about 1967 for them to get any kind of protection at all, depending on if you're talking about the federal level or the county or state level. Next slide. A little bit about the biology and ecology of wolves. They're the largest member of the Canidae family. You're going to see dogs that are bigger than wolves, but as far as wild members, they're the largest member. Some of the other things about them, the color, that's kind of a toss-up because they can be white, black, they can be grizzled, gray, brown. I've seen some ones that have a lot of silver in them. It really depends on where you're at. Some of the other things about them, when compared to dogs, they have more narrow chests. They're going to have longer legs typically. They're going to have the wider, more snowshoe-like paws that'll help them out in the wintertime. Some other things about them, they're often confused with coyotes and hybrids. A lot of times people will tell me that they saw a wolf or a coyote, but then you go and you check on sign and things like that, or if you see a photo and it turns out there's a lot of confusion when it comes to that. So we're going to address that later on with some of the other slides. A little bit about the social structure. So wolves tend around here to be about 2 to 10 in pack size, and depending on if there's enough prey and if there's a big enough land base, they can go larger than that. But often it's 2 to 10, and typically you're going to find the main members of the family just being the alpha male, the alpha female, and their offspring, and if there's enough prey and enough land base, there'll be some more extended family members as well. And the yearlings, sometimes they'll stick with the pack, sometimes they'll go off and form their own pack, sometimes they'll be loners for a while. Next slide. A little bit about the reproduction. They probably are just finishing up their reproducing right about now, so there should be pups probably in the next couple of months or so, I would think. Den sites. There can be a lot of different things for den sites. There can be caves, logs, they can go inside rock formations if there's enough there. A lot of different places they can take advantage of. As they get older, pups start out, they're just in the den, but as they get older, they're brought to rendezvous sites, and then they're brought to some of the kill sites and things like that as they start getting older and they're able to move away from some of the more protected areas. Habitat and food. Wolves are habitat generalists. Anywhere that they can find prey and they can find cover, they're going to try to take advantage of it, especially if there's things like lower road densities, less people, things like that. They're going to tend to take advantage of that. Territory size, and that's another one. It can be a toss-up. It really depends on where you're at. If the habitat's fragmented, you're going to end up with some smaller territory sizes. If you have more contiguous land base, you're going to end up with some bigger territory size, and typically it's going to be around 70 square miles. We already talked about the prey a little bit. Nowadays, the prey is going to be mostly white-tailed deer and beaver, and it's going to be supplemented by things like grouse, rabbits, or voles, or whatever's available. They will also take advantage of gut piles left by hunters, roadkill, any of those things. So here's a little bit about the wolf versus the coyote that I talked about. So some of the main differences are obviously going to be the way the ears look. So comparatively, when you look at the ears on a wolf, they're going to be more rounded. They're not going to appear to be quite as tall compared to the body size. And then the snout, the muzzle, is going to be a lot blockier and a lot wider on a wolf compared to a coyote. A coyote is going to have that more petite, pointed type snout. And you can really see it when you look at them looking straight on like that. You can see one has that just a bigger, blockier look to it. And the ears on the coyote are so pointed and tall that they don't look anywhere near as rounded and short as the wolf when you get a good close-up. Excellent. Here's a little bit more. This goes into some of the other characteristics, such as the prints. So when you see a wolf print, typically that's going to be quite a bit larger than your coyote print. You're going to be looking at more of a 4.5-inch long print versus a 2.5-inch long print, and that's quite a difference. Some other things about them, I've already talked about how large and blocky the muzzle is, rounded, relatively short ears. When it comes to the coats, the pelage, they're going to be very, very similar. You're going to see a lot of coyotes that have almost the exact same color scheme as the wolves in this area. The only time you can really tell, obviously it's not going to be the color of a coyote is if you see a pure black one or a pure white one. Chances are it's not going to be a coyote. Next slide. Here's some more about the prints. A little bit easier to get a visual on this one. The domestic dog is thrown in there, but that is highly variable. Obviously depends on what kind of breed of dog you're looking at. But generally, you're going to notice that the dog prints aren't really going to look like your wolf and your coyote prints up there. And here we get into some of the photos on reservation. So here's an example of a red cliff, a female wolf that takes advantage of the Red Cliff Reservation, and there's a coyote. And you can see a little bit of what I'm talking about with well, you can't see the legs on the coyote, but you can see the legs on the wolf. You can see how long her legs are, how big her paws are relative to her body size. So you get more of that snowshoe appearance of the feet that I was talking about. Allows them to run around on the snow without sinking in like what deer might do. And then the coyote, you could really see how pointed his face is right there. You can tell he doesn't have that same blockiness that wolf has. And then here's another one showing essentially the same thing. You can see the overall size difference in the body. Oftentimes you can see differences in the way they carry themselves, I noticed. So it's not 100% of the time, but coyotes tend to be a lot more skittish and they don't seem as confident in the way they carry themselves. Whereas if you see a wolf come on there, the way I like to describe it is they look like they walk in like they own the place. They don't seem like they're afraid of anything, kind of strutting around a little bit. And you see the coyotes, they kind of look like they're terrified of everything. So when I see a coyote come into the trail camera, they sprint back and forth and stare at the camera and get a lot of head bobs and weaves, and you can tell that they know something's up. And the wolf is just a lot more slow and mellow about it. Like he's not too worried about it. So that's one of the things I use for an easy characteristic to kind of give you an idea of whether you're looking at a wolf or a coyote. Some recent and current wolf stats. So in 2012, wolves were delisted. I'm sure most people in this room, since you're in here, I assume you care about wolves, you probably heard that they were delisted because the hunt started right afterwards. And once that hunt started, there was a lot of controversy, and there ended up being 3 seasons in Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 wolves were killed. So clearly a significant number, or part of that population was taken out. Some other things that have gone on. The delisting ruling was recently overturned in December. I'm sure many of you heard that. So that put wolves back on the endangered species list. And that might seem like a victory or a reprieve, but it could be short-lived because there are already 2 different congressional bills in the works that are going to try to get the wolf delisted. And I'm not sure of all of the details involved with it yet, but I think one of the goals is to make it to where you can't challenge the fact that it was delisted. And if that is the case, that's probably not going to make people in this room very happy. So personally, I wouldn't like to see the congressional bills passed, but I think it's important for people to know that that is in the works, and there's a very real chance that they could get delisted again in the near future. As far as a recent estimate, I put down 600 to 700 wolves. The DNR has a different number that they put out, but I like to be a little more, I just say there could be anywhere from 600 to 700. I don't know if I like to narrow it down quite as much as they do, because it depends on if you like the science that they use to come up with those numbers. And sometimes I have a little bit of an issue with the way they come up with those numbers. Doesn't mean they're wrong, it just doesn't happen to be the way that I like it. And also, this is something everybody's already known, but most of the tribes, if not all the tribes, have been opposed to the wolf hunt and continue to be opposed to the wolf hunt for a variety of reasons, some of which were already described here. I'm not going to go into this in a lot of depth. This is just some of the listing and delisting criteria, but some of this depends on whether you're talking about the state level or the federal level, and then if this congressional bill or the other congressional bill goes through, some of this may be subject to change. I'm not sure. I don't know all of the details of those bills. Now to some of the critical points of the plan. So the tribe recognizes wolves as a tribally important species. That's something that people probably already knew. There's prohibited hunting and trapping of wolves within the reservation boundary. Redcliffe is going to work cooperatively with APHIS Wildlife Services on a conflict issue management within that 6-mile buffer zone that we're proposing. But ideally, that buffer zone could be larger. I mean, it could be the entire Bayfield Peninsula could be a protection area. There's no real reason why it can't, especially if you look at how successful and how quickly they were successful, if you want to use success as the word, for the wolf hunt. They reached quotas very quickly, so I don't see that the Bayfield Peninsula is going to be necessary to reach those quotas if any further hunts do come about. So I think that Redcliffe can use that as a leverage to get this protection area recognized by the applicable agencies. And also, Redcliffe is not going to manage for a minimum number or maximum number of wolves. That's not one of our priorities. The priority is to manage for good habitat, and then if you leave the wolves alone, if you have good habitat and good prey base, they'll take care of themselves. And there's a lot of words on this one. I'm not going to go through all of these.